This next video is about some tools for formatting your stream output. So as we've seen before, if we wanted to make a number that looks like this, if we wanted to make it look like money or currency, we would want it to look this way. So we could use a function in our cout object called set format, and we'll basically set f, which means set flag, and that would be set f, and then we did something like iOS fixed, and we would say cout set f iOS show point, and then we would say cout dot precision 2. And then when we did that, that would actually output in the format that we needed to do. So in this video, I'm just going to kind of explain some of the different tools that are out there so that you can format your output in a nicer way. So these arguments for the functions are considered flags, and these are flags that are built into the object, and the object will look at this flag, and depending on the value of that flag, it will format itself in specific ways. So here's some of the formats that the book mentions. The first one is the iOS fixed. Excuse me. And basically, what this does is this makes the number not written in E notation. All right, so that means that we won't get a number that looks something like this. Right. If we use iOS scientific, then this will make it in E notation. So this makes output in E notation. So that means that we will, right? So this says that we won't do something like this. This says that we will do something like this. All right, that's a check mark. All right, the other one is going to be iOS show point. And this assures that a decimal point will show. And what that means is sometimes we can get a double, right? And sometimes our double can be just a 4 or a 5, right? But we want it to look like this, 5.00. So if we say show point, then it will make any number have a point, and if that number is just an integer, then it will just put in the decimal point and then how many zeros you want it to show afterwards. All right, and then of course the way we show how many zeros is by using the precision function. And this is a number, and this will show the number of digits after the decimal point. All right, right, and the secret word today is donut. All right. So precision is actually a function. It's not a flag. Just want to make sure we are aware of that. Here's another flag that we have. Is going to be iOS pause. Excuse me. iOS not pause. It's iOS show pause. And basically, what this does is it will put a plus sign if the number is positive. For example, if the number is 5.67 and it's a positive number, it will just put a plus there. Excuse me. So the other two functions are iOS right and iOS left. And these are basically used for the width function. Right, we have the width number and we can put a number in. And the way the width works is that if I have a value that I'm outputting, and let's say and this pretty much just sets spacing for your outputs. All right, so let's say that I want to output the number 7, but then the next time I want to put another number down, I wanted to put it 2 spaces after, and let's just consider that each of these squares are a space. So if I wanted to put the next number 2 spaces over, then let's say that's 9, then I would actually set the width of my output to actually 3, right? Because the value is going to take 1 space, and then we want the other 2 spaces to take up. Sorry. So the 3 would be the value of the space plus the 2 spaces afterwards. Then same thing. If I put in a 9, then it'll have 2 spaces after. This would be if the C out was set to 3. Right, because just think about each one of these having 3 spaces. So the iOS right and iOS left is saying, do you want the extra space to be to the right of the value or to the left? Right, so in this case, this would be iOS. Whoops. This would be iOS right. And that's because we had the value and then we put the width of the value to the right of that value. If we wanted to do iOS left, then it would look something like this. We would have a space, 7, and then we would have space, 9, right? This would be iOS left. All right, so those are some of the formats and some of the functions that we have. The other functions that we were mentioning in the book were some of the manipulators, and those are pretty much functions that will call a member function. These are kind of functions that come with the library. So if I didn't want to do cout dot with 4, I could actually just put in, I can use a function called set w, and I could say 4. And notice that this is not cout dot set w. This is actually just a standalone function. and that will call the member functions of the cout, and it will apply the width. And that allows me to do something like this. Um, I could say if I wanted to output my name, say I have an object that has my name, Dave, and then we have a R, and then we have a Smith. Um, if I wanted it to output my name, so it looks something like this: Smith, comma Dave, and then R. Um, I don't want a space between, the last letter of my name and the comma, but I do want a space here, and I want a space here. So I'm actually allowed to be able to do different spacing in one output. So I could say cout Dave. Well, excuse me, we were doing Smith first. So I could say cout. That was weird. I could say cout Smith. And then actually let me just make these variables. So we'll call it string. This will make it more sense. First equals Dave. Character init equals R. And string last equals Smith. This will just make the example make more sense. So I could say something like this: cout first. Oops, what happened? Cout first. And then I can say cout, whoops, not first, last. Cout last. And then I can say cout, I can say set W 0, which doesn't really make sense because we're having a comma. So I can just say cout my comma. Then I could say cout first. Oh, boy, sorry. Why is this not working? There we go. I could say cout first. If I say width 2, so set W2, then cout first, then set W2, and then initial. I'm gonna move that down here. And so that's another way that we can use it. Normally we would do something like this: cout last. Then we would have to do something like this: a string, put a space there. Then we would say cout first, and then we would do a string with a space, and then we would say init. And it's really up to your preference what looks better to you. This one seems easier to me, but this is just an alternative. So those are kind of the manipulator functions. So notice that these are not being called by cout. I'm not saying cout dot set W, right? I'm not doing that. All I'm doing is calling set W, and it is able to make those changes to the object because it is a manipulator function. One last thing to note is that when we have streams, right, our streams are objects. So that means that we actually can use them as return types and as function parameters. All right, and so there is one exception. There's one trick though. When we use a stream as a function parameter, it must be passed by reference. All right, so that means that if I was to create a function, let's say I had a function and I wanted to take a file input. I wanted to take a string that can open a file. Then I would pretty much just say, let's call it open file. And inside here, I would say if string, because that is the data type, that is the class name of the input, the file input library. And then I'll just put a name for the function, excuse me, for the object. But it must be a pass by reference. And now I can actually do whatever I want inside my function using this n, and it will be passed by reference. So the original object that's passed to it will make all the changes because it's a pass by reference. Yeah, and that's the only other thing that I wanted to mention. All right.